The alarm shrieked through the cargo hauler Veshin's Pride, with a pitch that made First Officer Kelth's sensory stalks retract in pain. The sound meant only one thing, and that thing was death. "Radiation leak," Captain Vess announced, her voice admirably steady, despite the tremor in her three-fingered hands. "Sector 7, Engine Compartment Gamma." Kelth felt his respiratory sacs constrict. Of all the ways to die in the void, radiation was among the worst. Not the quick mercy of decompression or the instant erasure of a core breach. Radiation meant cells unwinding, genetic code dissolving into chaos, a slow descent into system failure, while you were still conscious enough to feel everything breaking down. "How bad?" he managed to ask. Vest studied her console, and Kelth watched the blue bioluminescence in her cheek patches fade to a sickly gray. 0.7 rads per hour in the immediate zone, dropping to 0.3 in adjacent compartments. A collective gasp rippled through the bridge crew. 0.7. They might have 6, maybe 8 hours before the exposure became lethal. 12 if they were lucky and stayed far from the source. The Veshin's Pride was a mid-range hauler, not built for speed. The nearest station was 16 hours away, at maximum burn. "Seal the compartment," Vess ordered. "Evacuation protocols. All crew to forward sections. No one goes near Sector 7. "Captain," said Morix from the engineering station, his voice thin with fear. "The leak is in the primary coolant line. If we don't repair it, the engine will overheat in 4 hours. We lose the engine. We lose life support." The bridge fell silent. The mathematics of their death were simple now. 4 hours until the ship became a tomb. 8 hours until radiation killed anyone who tried to fix it. "We have a passenger in Sector 6, Kelth said, checking the manifest. "Residential compartment adjacent to the engine section. The human." "Spirits preserve us," Vess breathed. "Get them out, now." Kelth activated the ship-wide communication system. "Attention human passenger Marcus Chen. Please evacuate Sector 6 immediately and report to Sector 2. This is an emergency. Repeat, evacuate Sector 6 immediately." They waited. The seconds stretched. Kelth pulled up the internal sensors, trying to locate the human's biosignature among the ship's other life signs. Humans were strange creatures, their biochemistry so different from the 11 known spacefaring species that they barely registered on standard scanners. But there, a thermal signature in Sector 6, moving but not toward the exit. "Human Chen, please acknowledge," Kelth transmitted again. "You are in immediate danger. Radiation leak in adjacent compartment. You must evacuate now." The communication panel crackled. "Yeah, I heard you the first time," came the human's voice, utterly calm. "I'm just grabbing my lunch. Be there in a minute." Kelth stared at the speaker in disbelief. "Human Chen, you don't understand. There is a radiation leak, 0.7 rads per hour. This is lethal." "Lethal to you guys, maybe," the human replied, and Kelth heard what sounded like a door opening in the background. "Hold on, I need to check something." The thermal signature moved. Kelth watched in horror as it crossed from Sector 6 directly into Sector 7, into the radiation zone, into the place they had just sealed, because no living thing could survive there. "Human Chen," Kelth shouted into the communicator, "you've entered a contaminated area. Exit immediately." "Relax," the human's voice came back, slightly distorted now by the shielding around Sector 7. "What's the rad count again?" 0.7 rads per hour, Kelth said, his sensory stalks fully extended in alarm. "You're receiving a lethal dose." There was a pause. Then, and Kelth would remember this moment for the rest of his life, the human laughed. Not a bitter laugh or a mad laugh. A genuinely amused laugh, like someone had told a mildly funny joke. Point 7? That's nothing. That's like less than a chest X-ray. I'm getting more radiation from the cosmic background than from this leak. Captain Vess had gone completely still, her bioluminescence flickering in confusion. Kelth, did the translator malfunction? Did the human just say .7 rads is nothing? That's what I heard, Captain. The human's voice came through again. Hey, where exactly is this leak? I can help patch it if you want. Help patch it? Morix whispered from engineering. It's in the middle of a radiation field. Human Chen, Vess said, taking over the communication herself. I don't think you understand the severity of the situation. The radiation in that compartment will kill you. Your cells will break down. Your genetic material will fragment. You will die. Another pause. Captain, I appreciate the concern, but humans are from Earth. Do you know what Earth is like? A Class M planet, Vess replied, confused by the question. Standard gravity, oxygen-nitrogen atmosphere, single sun. Sure, but that sun, it's a radiation blaster. We evolved under a star that's constantly bombarding our planet with radiation. Our atmosphere blocks most of it, but we still get hit with cosmic rays, solar radiation, background radiation from rocks. We literally have radiation in our bones, from potassium-40. Our bodies are built to handle this stuff. Kelth checked the medical database, his hands shaking. Humans, Earth, radiation tolerance. The data that came back made his respiratory sacs seize up entirely. Captain, he said hoarsely, according to the xenobiology files, humans can tolerate up to 400 rods of acute exposure before showing severe symptoms. Their ship's crews routinely operate in fields of 0.5 to 0.8 rads during emergency procedures. They rate it as mild exposure on their safety charts. That's impossible, Morix said. No organic being could survive that. The cellular damage alone would be catastrophic. Yeah, we've got this stuff called DNA repair enzymes. The human's voice interjected cheerfully. He had apparently kept the channel open. Really robust ones. Evolution on Earth selected for it. Because again, we live on a planet being constantly irradiated by our sun. Plus, our cells are pretty good at controlled apoptosis. That's where damaged cells just kill themselves before they become a problem. Oh, and we've got redundant systems for basically everything important. Vess looked at Kelth. Kelth looked at Morix. None of them had words for this. So anyway, the human continued. I found your leak. It's in the coolant coupling. Looks like a microfracture in the seal. Pretty standard failure mode for this type of engine. You got a patch kit somewhere? In the emergency locker, Morix said automatically. Then seemed to realize he was giving instructions to someone standing in what should be a lethal radiation field. Compartment 7C. But, human Chen, even if you can tolerate the radiation, the heat from the engine, the caustic coolant vapor. I'll be careful, the human said. Oh, hey, perfect. Perfect? Vess asked weakly. Yeah, the leak is putting out a decent amount of heat. I've been looking for a way to warm up my lunch, and the galley's heat unitus has been broken since we left port. Mind if I use this? Silence on the bridge. Complete, absolute silence. Use what? Kelth finally managed. The radiation leak. To heat my food. It's putting out thermal energy, right? That's what radiation does when it's absorbed. Perfect for warming up my noodle container. Captain Vess made a sound that no Kelth had ever heard a Theshian make before. It was somewhere between a wheeze and a whimper. You want, she said slowly, to use lethal radiation to cook your food. Well, not cook. Just warm up. It's already cooked. I just need it hot. And it's not lethal. It's just spicy air. Spicy air, Vess repeated numbly. Yeah, a little extra energy. Spicy. Kelth pulled up the internal cameras, overriding the safety protocols that should have kept them offline in a contaminated zone. The image that appeared on the screen would be burned into his memory forever. The human stood in Sector 7, clearly visible in his casual shipwear, not even wearing a radiation suit. In one hand, he held what appeared to be a meal container. In the other, a standard repair kit. He had positioned himself directly next to the fractured coolant coupling, where a faint shimmer in the air indicated the radiation field was most intense, and he had placed his meal container on top of the warm pipe, propped up against the very source of the leak. Oh, you've got cameras in here, the human said, noticing the lens and waving. Hi, Captain. Don't worry. I'll have this fixed in like 10 minutes, just letting my noodles warm up first. Morix made a choking sound. He's using a Class 3 radiation hazard as a heating element. Waste not, want not, the human said cheerfully, and pulled a tool from the repair kit. Okay, let me just seal this real quick, while my food heats. You guys are lucky, If this leak had gotten any worse, you'd have lost containment entirely. But it's just a surface fracture, easy fix. They watched, transfixed, as the human worked. His movements were efficient, practiced. He showed no sign of distress, no indication that he was standing in an environment that would have killed any of them in hours. He simply worked, occasionally checking his meal container to see if it had reached the desired temperature. Human Chen, Vess said, and her voice was very small. Have you done this before? Repaired radiation leaks? Oh, sure, the human replied, applying sealant to the fracture. I worked on nuclear reactors back on Earth before I got into space freight. This is way less radiation than we dealt with there. We literally had reactor cores, putting out thousands of rads, and we'd work on the coolant systems with just basic shielding. Humans have been using nuclear power for like 300 years now. We're pretty comfortable with it. Comfortable? Kelth echoed faintly. Yeah, I mean, we use radiation for all sorts of stuff. Medical imaging, cancer treatment, food sterilization, power generation. We've got cities that run entirely on nuclear reactors. It's clean energy once you figure out the engineering. The human paused in his work to rotate his meal container. There we go, that side's done. Just need to warm the other half. You have cities, Morix said slowly, powered by intentional radiation. Well, controlled nuclear fission. But yeah, humans figured out how to split atoms in the 1940s. We've been living with radiation ever since. Some of our space stations use radioisotope thermoelectric generators. That's basically a chunk of radioactive material that we harvest heat from. We literally use radiation to boil water, to make electricity. Vess sat down in her command chair with a heavy thump. You use it to boil water. Best way to make steam for turbines, the human confirmed. He applied another layer of sealant. Okay, I think that's got it. Let me just test the seal, and we should be good. Oh, and my noodles are done. He picked up his meal container, apparently unconcerned that it had just been heated by lethal radiation, and took a bite. Perfect temperature, he said with satisfaction. Thanks for the heads up about the leak, Captain. Made for a convenient lunch spot. Kelth checked the sensors. The radiation levels in Sector 7 were dropping. 0.6 rods, 0.4, 0.2. The human had sealed the leak in 10 minutes, while heating his lunch. Human Chen, Vess said, and there was a note in her voice that Kelth had never heard before. Awe, perhaps, or fear. Please return to the bridge. Sure thing, Captain. Just let me clean up here. They waited. When the human emerged from Sector 7, he looked exactly as he had when he'd entered. No burns, no visible radiation damage, no signs of cellular breakdown. He was eating his noodles and carrying the repair kit under one arm. All fixed, he reported, setting the kit down. You'll want to monitor that coupling for the next few days. Make sure the seal holds, but it should be fine. The fracture wasn't too deep. Captain Vess stared at him. You just walked into a lethal radiation field without protective equipment. Wasn't lethal, the human corrected gently. Not for me, anyway. I mean, I wouldn't want to make a habit of it, and I'll probably get a little extra screening at my next medical checkup. But, 0.7 rads for 10 minutes. He shrugged. I've gotten worse flying through Earth's Van Allen belts. Your planet has radiation belts? Kelth asked weakly. Oh yeah, big ones. Earth's magnetic field traps, charged particles from the solar wind, creates these zones of pretty intense radiation around the planet. We have to fly through them to get to space. It's just part of living on Earth. Morix had pulled up something on his console. Captain, I'm reading the human's biosignature. His cellular integrity is at 99.8%. No DNA damage. No degradation of any kind. Told you, the human said, taking another bite of noodles. Humans are tough. We kind of have to be. Earth is a Class M planet, sure, but it's also kind of a nightmare world. We've got radiation from space, radiation from our own rocks, an atmosphere that's technically poisonous to most species because of the oxygen concentration, weather systems that can level cities, tectonic activity that regularly reshapes the landscape, and an ecosystem where everything is trying to eat everything else. Your planet is a death world, Vess said quietly. The human considered this. I mean, we don't like to think of it that way. It's home. But yeah, I guess by galactic standards, Earth is pretty extreme, which is why humans are built the way we are. Robust, redundant systems, high radiation tolerance, rapid healing, aggressive immune systems. We had to be, or we wouldn't have survived. Kelth thought about the human standing in the radiation field, casually heating his lunch. Thought about the way he'd fixed the leak, like it was nothing, like he was changing a light fixture instead of performing emergency repairs in an environment that would kill anyone else on this ship. How long could you have stayed in there? He asked. The human did some mental math. At 0.7 rads per hour, I could have worked in there for a full day before I'd start to worry about acute exposure. A week before I'd see serious symptoms. And even then, our medicine is really good at treating radiation sickness. We've had a lot of practice. A day, Morix whispered. He could have stayed in there for a day. Could have, the human agreed, but didn't need to. Like I said, it was an easy fix. He finished his noodles and disposed of the container in a recycling port. Anything else you need? I'm pretty handy with mechanical systems if you've got other repairs. Vess seemed to gather herself. No, human Chen. Thank you. You've done more than enough. You saved this ship and everyone on it. Just helped out, the human said with a smile. That's what you do on a ship, right? Everyone looks out for everyone else. He headed back toward his quarters, whistling a tune that Kelth didn't recognize. They watched him go in silence. Captain, Kelth said finally, I need to update our emergency protocols. Yes, Vess agreed. We should add a note about human radiation tolerance. That's not what I meant, Kelth said. I meant we need to update our protocols for what to do when there's a human on board and we think we're in mortal danger. The correct action appears to be, ask the human for help. Morix laughed a little hysterically. They live on a planet that's trying to kill them every day. They evolved to survive radiation that would melt our cells. They use atomic power for everyday energy needs, and they think of it all as normal. Humans, Vess said, and there was a quality to her voice that might have been respect or might have been terror, are insane. No, Kelth corrected, thinking of the human's calm competence, his easy smile, the way he'd treated a lethal crisis like a minor inconvenience. They're not insane. They're just from Earth, and Earth makes them into something the rest of us can barely comprehend. The alarm finally shut off, the ship's systems recognizing that the radiation leak had been sealed. In the sudden quiet, Kelth could hear the normal sounds of the Veshan's pride, the hum of engines, the whisper of air recyclers, the distant clang of cargo shifting in the hold. Normal sounds, safe sounds, sounds that wouldn't exist if not for a human who thought radiation was spicy air and used it to heat his lunch. Kelth pulled up the galactic database and began typing a report. Other ships needed to know. Other crews needed to understand. If you had a human on board and faced a crisis involving radiation, heat, toxic atmospheres, or any of a dozen other things that would kill normal species, the human probably considered it a minor inconvenience. Because humans weren't normal. They were from Earth. And Earth was less a planet and more a continuous disaster that happened to have an oxygen atmosphere. The humans who survived it, who thrived on it, who looked at the galaxy's horrors and shrugged and said, "Yeah, we've got worse at home." They weren't insane. They were just the product of a world that had spent billions of years teaching them that nothing in the universe was too dangerous to overcome. Even radiation was just spicy air. Just another problem to solve. Just another thing to adapt to use, to turn into an advantage. Just another day for a human. Kelth finished his report and sent it to the galactic database. He wondered how many other ships would read it and dismiss it as exaggeration. How many crews would refuse to believe that any species could be so casually, terrifyingly durable. They'd learn. Eventually they all learned. Because humans were out here now, moving through the galaxy, and wherever they went, they brought their death world resilience with them. They brought their ability to look at the unsurvivable and find a way to not just survive it, but to make it useful, to heat their lunch with it. In his quarters, Marcus Chen settled back into his bunk and picked up the book he'd been reading before the alarm interrupted. It was a Theshian novel, translated into human standard, a thriller about a crew facing impossible odds in deep space. He smiled as he read. The aliens in the story thought a solar flare was an insurmountable obstacle. If only they knew what humans considered a normal Tuesday. The ship hummed around him, safe and whole, carrying them all toward their destination. Outside, the stars burned with radiation that would kill most species. Marcus didn't even notice. He was from Earth. This was just another day.
Claim your seat at the apex.